Hello everyone, and welcome to this hand discussion video, Baby Did a Bad Thing. Don't worry, this isn't a dedication video to Chris Isaac. It's a video about the draw games Badacey and Badeucey. As a reminder, Badacey is a split pot game combining Badoogie and Ace to 5 low ball, while Badeucey is a split pot game combining Deuce to 7 triple draw and Badoogie, where the Ace plays high. We have 5 hands to discuss in total, so let's jump right in and start with Badacey. We begin with the Badacey hand from the 8-16 game at the Wynn. Following a middle position raised by a villain we've encountered in multiple hands from previous videos, we look down at a made 6 doogie and re-raise from the small blind to $24. Our opponent calls and we draw 1 as our opponent draws 2. We lead out and our opponent calls, and since we squeeze a deuce to make a 6-6, we pat as our opponent draws 1. We bet again, and now our opponent raises to $32. Having such a strong hand, and most likely scooping both ways, this should be a standard 3-bet, but for some reason we just call. It's so hard for someone to have a two-way hand stronger than ours, and our hand is more weighted to scooping than to being scooped, so I have no idea why I just called here.
Don't sign up for this, nothing for you.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead and move it, because Tim definitely started. Oh no, she's not. Excuse me?
Regardless, I'm again pat as our opponent draws 1 and we lead out with a bet of $16. I think we now realized our mistake, and although he may have a stronger Badoogie than us, it's more likely that he has some kind of two-way wheel draw and might have been raising for value, or possibly even had a draw to a good 7 both ways. Our opponent calls and we table our hand and scoop the pot. In this case, it's even more likely he had some kind of 7 doogie, and we definitely missed at least one bet of value, if not more.
I gotta start learning the names over there.
No, he's not that loose. He was walking right.
About 3?
I mean, dealer, sit down. I won't play with this deal.
In this hand, the action folds to us in the cutoff, and we raise it up holding a 7 low draw and 3 to a wheel Badoogie. Both the button and the small blind call. This is my first time playing with the button player, but everyone else on the table knows him. The player in the small blind is normally on the tight side, and has been known to play as high as the 40-80 mixed game at Bellagio.
Oh, snap. I got a call.
Well, go ahead.
Once the small blind draws 2, I decide to also draw 2 to try and make the wheel both ways. There are situations where keeping the 7 is fine, like when it is part of your Badoogie draw, but in this spot, I think drawing clean is the better option. When the button also draws 2, I feel like it was the right play, as I most likely have the best hand both ways.
And it's like, seriously? There was a lot of them that did that.
I immediately make an 8-8 and bet out as the button raises me. The small blind folds, and now I have a decision. I decide to try and represent a very nutted hand, with a plan to raise and pat and then keep betting. If he puts additional heat on me, I can now decide to draw or fold, and he still might be drawing anyway. I make it 3 bets to go, and the button calls as we both stand pat. I have to bet again here, as there are definitely a few combinations of hands that scoop me but would break, such as an 8 smooth with a better Badeucey or some roughish 7s. Obviously, if the button's hand is pretty nutted, then I'm just gonna have to lose this pot. I bet, the button calls, and we both stand pat. Now it's unlikely after these actions that I'm often scooping, and it's definitely more likely that I myself may be scooped. So I check, as does the button. I table my 8-8 and he tables a 6 low with no Badeucey, and we chop it up. Obviously the line I took here out of position was in an effort to potentially see my opponent break a better hand, and there was a debate on keeping the 7 and drawing 1 at the start, but in the end this hand was a roller coaster of my hand is good, my hand isn't good, maybe my hand is good, but I'm happy chopping it up anyway. The final hand of Badacey sees me dealt a very rough 8 and a 3-card 6 in the hijack. I open with a raise and only the big blind calls and draws 2. Now this hand is pattable in Badeucey, but in Badacey it's definitely wise to throw both the 8 and the 7 and try to draw as smooth as possible. Some people definitely keep one, if not both, but the value of your hand is so capped if you do decide to keep one or both of these cards. So I draw 2 behind and am immediately rewarded for making the correct break, as I find the ace and the 3 to make both a 6 low and a 6 Badeucey. The big blind checks and I bet. The big blind calls and again draws 2. I stand pat and bet after the action is checked to me. The big blind calls once again and now draws 1 and checks. I bet, the big blind folds and I scoop the pot.
You're right there.
My house is right there on the corner.
Just past the forward. You gotta cross the forward stop and place right. I feel overmatched going to this house, but
No. You got so many. There's a completely different. You got 2 different games. It's a different field that comes there that comes here.
Okay, I'm not against it. Good game. I like saving rate.
There isn't much to this hand apart from showing that if, for example, I had kept both cards or just the 7, I probably wouldn't be able to bet the final street and thus would lose value on my hand. This kind of mistake was made by me in one of my deuce to 7 triple draw hands I posted, and consequently shows that small tweaks to your game can yield potentially more profit in the long run.
Times 2 tables, times 15 hours? 12.50. 2.50 an hour? 2.50 an hour. We start 3 p.m.
Switching the game to Badeucey, this hand comes from the 8-16 game at the Wynn.
Any color change?
We open under the gun with a raise and get looked up by the big blind who draws 2. We have the best starting 3-card doogie draw, and in this situation there isn't much thought to tossing the 8, so we draw 1.
Thank you. I'll restrain myself from erasing it. Thank you. See, look at this.
Strong game.
The big blind checks and we bet out $8, as the big blind calls and draws 2 again to our 1. The big blind checks, and with us pairing, we decide to check behind. I think this might be a small mistake here. We caught a good card for card removal consideration, and we still have a great draw both ways. There is also a chance our opponent check folds and we win the pot right there. The big blind draws 2 again, and we draw 1 and make a jack low. The big blind checks, and there is a thought to betting here, but in reality, if we're betting for value, what are we getting called by? There are situations where we pip our opponent both ways, but the likelihood is that he would only call with a hand that beats us for one side of the pot. So we check behind and table the winning hand, as the big blind states he had a 7-5 deuce rainbow and then called another 7 and then a 5. The final hand of the video sees us head over to Caesars Palace for the 6-12 dealer's choice game, and a player who I may have logged the most hours with raises in middle position. We look down at a 7 doogie and a draw to the number 2 low on the button and make it $18 to go. Some might argue to just flat calling to try and get the blinds in and potentially win or chop a big pot, but I actually think that if I was a little stronger, like a 6 or 5 doogie, then I might attempt that. However, in this situation, it's just a straight value raise against an opponent that isn't afraid to play on the loose side. The blinds fold and my opponent calls and draws 2 to our 1. We bet dark after he checks, and then we squeeze a 4 as our opponent check raises, and then we make it 3 bets to go. There's no need to get tricky here as we have position, and since we perceive our hand to basically being the nuts, we just want to shovel as many chips as possible into the pot.
Should leave them just stacked up?
Should be $9. 9 chips.
Oh yeah, I got you.
Just leave them in front of us.
Yeah.
Our opponent calls and stands pat, as do we. He checks and we bet as he calls. Again, we both stand pat and I bet and he check calls. Again, we both stand pat and I bet and he check calls. There is never a thought to him having a better hand with the way he's played this. And after he calls and sees our 7-7, he shows an 8-8 and folds. Our opponent played his hand pretty much the only way he could without getting greedy and trying to break and draw better. He just ran into a cooler.
I started with the doogie, caught the 4.
So there we go with the baby did a bad thing video. Obviously we made some big hands in this video, but there were definitely a couple of spots where we might have missed out on some value. And if you continually are making these types of mistakes, then your overall profit will suffer. I hope you enjoyed this hand discussion video on Badacey and Badeucey. The next one I plan on doing is going to cover a much newer game in comparison, as we'll be discussing triple draw high-low double qualifier, or Archie as it's also known. And as always, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like and share the videos, and leave any questions or comments down below. Until next time, good luck out there.